Hi guys, welcome to the webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Mary Poplin. I am the product specialist for Boris FX, Imaginary Systems, and now Sapphire. We're going to be going over the Perfect Cut Sapphire 10's Transition Builder with Nick Harauz. Now, Nick is an Apple certified and Adobe and Avid trainer. All right. And let's get started on what we're going to cover. We're going to cover how to use the Sapphire Transition Builder to create custom transitions. We're going to modify your classic Sapphire transitions within Builder. We're going to explore the pre-built advanced transitions that ship free with Sapphire 10. And we're going to walk through the cross-platform capabilities on the Transition Builder to share preset transitions between Avid, Premiere, and Resolve, and your other hosts. So Nick Harauz is an Apple and Adobe and Avid certified trainer, like I said, but since 2002, Nick's worked with domestic and international brands offering video production and motion graphics services. Some of his clients include Procter & Gamble and Virgin Mobile. Currently, Nick is working on his first feature film entitled Lost and Found, and you can find him on Lynda and Creative Cloud Learn. Now, your co-hosts today are going to be Brian Fox. He's the Director of Product Marketing at Boris FX. And I am Mary Poplin, the Product Specialist with Imaginary Systems and Boris FX. Join us online at www.borisfx.com. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Vimeo. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Nick.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me here for this awesome webinar. We're going to be covering a bunch of stuff with Sapphire's Transition Builder, and also just taking a look at first of all the transitions that ship with Sapphire 10. So we're going to get familiar with some of the basics of how to work with transitions, also to see some of the presets that are available. And for those of you who are looking for some more advanced techniques, stay with us until the end, because we're going to be covering some great ideas of how you can create your own transitions that you can use on any of your productions. So I've got Premiere Pro open, as you can see, and I've got just a little project here. This is some footage from Nashville, Tennessee's music scene. And what I'd like to do is spice up this sequence with transitions, and we're going to just take a look at one transition in particular first. Now, before I dive into adding transitions, one thing that I like to do to prepare my projects is to get the best cuts possible without a transition. I'm a firm believer if you can try to use or try to get a cut in terms of like a J cut in the case of this music, you can create some nice cuts first and then add transitions to complement your overall piece. So this is, of course, how can you use transitions to drive your story forward. And the great part is that Sapphire has so many transitions beyond Premiere Pro's capabilities that we should just dive in and take a look at the library. So here's my sequence. It's already open up, and the first thing I'm going to do is use one of my favorite shortcuts, which is just Shift-7. Shift-7 brings me to the Effects tab, and already I have the Sapphire Transitions folder open up, and this you can find under Video Transitions once Sapphire is installed or once you install a free trial. Now, here inside the category, I'm actually going to select this S Dissolve Glow, and I can simply drag it onto a clip by selecting it and then just placing it on the edit point of a clip. Now, once I apply a transition to a clip, I like to move my playhead over that transition. And I'm going to hit equals here on the timeline just to zoom in on the transition. I like to basically change the parameters of a transition when I'm over the middle so I can then start to customize it how I see fit. So I'm going to select the transition and then hit another shortcut, Shift-5, to bring up my effect controls. And the first thing I'm going to do is go here to the background and change this from none over to video 1. And this is just a way of identifying which track is involved in this transition. Now, before I start to play around with these parameters, which I'll do here in a second, I always like to explore the presets that ship with a given transition. So let me go here and load a preset, and you'll see here that we're going to actually load up a Sapphire preset browser. And here are the presets that ship with this Dissolve Glow. Almost the entire transition library comes with presets, so I totally recommend that you check some of them that ship, as in this could be a great starting point, and you can take here and customize it further. So I'll just hit the play button to show you that it loads in the still frame of the A and B side of the edit, and we can see that transition working in place. This is the default that came on when I applied the transition. However, I can, of course, click and select another preset here. And once I get more familiar with this library, you'll see that I've actually marked a few of these as favorites. So anything that has that yellow star is marked as a favorite. And this makes it easier for me to find this later on. So if I go here to the Favorites tab, you'll see I only have a few transitions loaded up in there, making it much easier to find. So I really do like the starting point of this super subtle glow, just a nice soft glow, maybe a little bit too strong in terms of the glow brightness, but we're going to go and load this in to Premiere Pro. And you'll see here in a second, when I go right here to my program monitor, that transition updates. Now for some of the most useful controls here of this glow, or some that I find. One is, of course, we can affect the glow brightness. So I'm over here in my effect controls. I'm just going to bring that down a bit. I'm going to bring it down to 2.5. Now, I also like to play with the glow threshold. So threshold works between two values, 0 being all the luminance pixels are affected in the glow, and 1 being none of them are affected. So one handy trick, or Premiere Pro trick, is if you take a value or any parameter, you hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC, and you scrub, you can essentially work between these values in very small increments. Okay? Shift actually will increase it to basically change the parameter a lot faster, but you can see here I'm just dialing back and forth the glow threshold. And when I find a value that I like, somewhere around 0.5, I'll stop. Now I can go in here and also change the glow color. So I'm just going to go click in here and I'm going to select a red color. Maybe something just a little less vibrant. There we go. I'll choose OK, and that will update. And another thing I like to do is a few things here. One is I like to play around with the glow width. So just to show you what 0 looks like on both the X and the Y, I'll start to increase this further. And we can get a little bit of a softer glow when we start to play with the X and Y value. If you're trying to move slowly, think about using that Command or Control key on a PC. To get a few varying color options, I want to start to play with the red, green, and blue width. So I'm going to leave the red value as is, but just slightly change the green value to about a 0.6. You can see there are already some color differences in the program monitor. I'm just going to change the width of the blue to 0.2. And once I've done that, you can see that that updates. I can almost have like a little nice soft glow type, not quite a light leak effect, but similar in nature. And say I like this, and the end result is that I have a very quick sequence to export. So this could be a slideshow. This could be something where you just want to use the same transition over and over again. There are a few different ways that you can save this, and I would like to cover that. One is you can save this to Premiere Pro. The idea behind it is it would preserve the length of the transition. Right now, in my Premiere Pro preferences, this transition is approximately 1 second long. But I can make that, of course, shorter or longer as I see fit. And then once I change that transition length, if I go to my effect controls and select that transition, I hit Control and click, I can save this as a preset to the library. Now just one note about transitions. They're actually not saved as a transition, but they're saved as a Premiere Pro effect. But you can apply a Premiere Pro effect as a transition. There's only one shortcoming to this, and that is that there is something called a default transition in Premiere Pro. And the idea behind it is that you can use a shortcut key. In the case of a PC, this is Control-D. In the case of a Mac, this is Command-D. What this allows you to do is apply transitions or the default cross-dissolve to as many edit points as you have selected. In the case of me saving this as a preset, it won't transfer. I won't be able to select this preset and apply it as a default transition because it's saved as an effect. So I might just change this dissolve glow, and instead of having the word preset there, let me just zoom in here a bit. I'm going to change that to leak. And after I do that, I'm going to hit OK. If I head over back to my effects tab, this is that first way. If I go to the presets here, you'll see there the dissolve glow leak has been saved to the library. Now, the other way to save this, and this is essentially you can save this to the Sapphire library of presets. So here, I'm just going back to my effect controls, and instead of control clicking here, which saves it to Premiere, we can save this as a preset here. Now, there are some very big advantages to this. Let's just say that you're working with an editor or a colorist from DaVinci Resolve, or another editor from Avid, I can actually export a preset I saved to Sapphire, and it's cross-platform compatible to those applications that support Builder. So that's fantastic. You can see I can export this preset file, I can share this with someone on another system, and they can use it as they see fit in those cross-platform workflows. So I'll just save this as a glow light leak, and we'll get into saving other types of presets a bit later. But one thing I like to do is give this some characteristics. So some of these characteristics here could be glint. Let's type in lighting. I'll scroll down, saturated, simulation, and so on and so forth, a transition here. You can add new characteristics, as well as you can, of course, save this as a favorite and export this as a file, as I've mentioned. Now, so once I save this glow light leak, I will choose to save this. Okay. Let me give you the example here, where what I'm going to do is just go back to my Effects tab, apply a new S-Dissolve glow to an edit point, move my playhead over that, hit Shift-5 to go to my effect controls. Just want to load a preset. And what I should see here is that new preset that I saved, that glow light leak, is now available. Okay, you can easily apply that to a clip. Once I load it, it then updates and I can easily apply it. Now for that solution, in this case, one quick way to, let's say, apply transitions to this overall sequence, I'm just going to delete that transition, and I'm going to hit Command-C to copy this, or Control-C on a PC to copy this to the pasteboard. In certain cases where I can't apply that transition to everything, or this one that I've already set up, what I like to do is click and then shift-click all my transition points. The great part about this is, with them all selected and then hitting Command-V, you can see on the video portions that that dissolve that I copied to the pasteboard is then pasted onto everything else. One final thing, just here before we wrap up this section, I'm going to go into the Effects tab and just show you that if this dissolve glow is just something that you use all the time, you can control-click it and set the selected as a default transition. Now the magic of this is, if I just hit Command-A to select everything, this is just something I use all the time, I can hit, in this case, Command-D, and you'll see that that dissolve glow was applied to everything in one fell swoop. Control-D again on the PC. Now just checking in, Brian, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think everything's going good. I think you're hitting all the points.
Awesome. I just sometimes it's just so quiet here in my headset. I just want to make sure that people are engaged in everything. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I'm riveted.
Awesome. I love that word, riveted. Let's keep that up. Cool. So I'm going to go over to. I have another sequence here. It's called Transitions 2. And these are just some of the favorite transitions that I use quite a bit that are available from the Sapphire Transitions category. One thing, if you don't know, if you go to your Effects tab, here at the bottom of the Effects tab is your ability to create a folder. And I have a folder inside of Premiere Pro for my favorite transitions. I also have on another system a folder, of course, for my favorite effects. And the great part is you can just take transitions from various categories. This could be from Premiere Pro as well as from Sapphire. And inside this folder, you'll see that it's essentially linking to the original transition. But rather than look through a list of like 30 different transitions, I can just minimize that to, let's say, the ones that I use 95% of the time. And in most cases, it is about 95% of the time I'll use particular transitions for a client, so to speak. So here are some of the ones that I use on a daily basis. One is just a simple dissolve blur. I'll just click on that and hit Shift-5 so you can see some of the parameters. Again, we can, of course, load a preset. Now the next one I'm going to go over to here is the lens flare, or the S-Dissolve lens flare. And the reason I bring this up is sometimes certain default parameters can be deceiving. As in this case, I'm not a big fan of this default lens flare. Well, let's just take a look at some of the power of presets. So with this selected, I'm just going to go here into my effect controls. And if I click on the load preset button, we go back into the preset browser. And someone's taken the time to create 155 presets. It's 155. Sometimes, just in case of lens flares, what I find is when you preview them over a video image, it's actually better to go up to either the view menu up here and just preview it on black. It just gives you an idea for what's happening there in the transition without seeing the video element. And you can see there that all my thumbnails update as well. So you can go through here and literally search through 155 presets, which I think is a fair number and just something that's great to add to your next project depending on what you're working on. So I'll go over here and select maybe the Palm Beach sunrise. You can see that update here in a second. In our view menu, you can see how that transition is taking place. I was just over the hiding part, which is all white. And saying that you like that, simply load this into Premiere Pro. So just keep in mind that sometimes the defaults that you see for a transition might not be what is all offered by a transition. And if that wasn't enough for you, if you go to Effect Controls, keep in mind you've got a few parameters to choose from. And for those who like to customize their lens flares, there is this section right here. I'm just going to make sure that video one background is on, and I'm going to go here to edit the lens. And the cool part about this is that you can actually manipulate every single element that composes the lens flares that were created. So there's quite a few here to choose from, just different parameters that are available. Okay, right there, you can see all of the elements here on the right-hand side, as well as the properties that I can affect. So you can really get into some realistic customizations by, first of all, choosing a preset and then being able to play with the parameters there. Just a ton of power. So just kind of moving on. You can see here I've actually chosen a film roll in this case of a transition. If I select that film roll, what I've done is I've actually turned off a lot of the parameters and just kept on the roll property. And this is something I sometimes use in, let's say, fast-paced music videos, just a roll. And of course, we can bring in that sort of film damage here. We have the option of adding hairs, scratches, flicker, vignette darkness, as well as just, the ability to load a preset if need be. Okay. Another one of my favorites is Dissolve Shake. And here, if I select that transition, just kind of moving throughout, of course, we see a little bit of a shake. Two of the most used parameters on this is that you could increase the amplitude as well as the frequency to get varying types of shakes depending on what type of project you have. So last but not least, I'm just going to go over here to this Swished 3D. And I've actually customized this quite a bit. So this is from just playing around with different transitions over and over again, but I'm going to go here to my effect controls and just look at some of the parameters of the Swish 3D. Again, we can load a preset, but one of my favorite things is actually located in the wrap parameter. And what you can do is wrap the image or have it reflect, as you see here, during the pivotal point of the transition, where it kind of creates grid-like type patterns. Combining this with increasing the Z distance, and then playing with different types of rotation, such as rotation, swivel, and tilt, you can really customize your Swish 3D transitional effect. Now, I changed the default parameter also, the effect parameter, to chroma warp instead of a blur, which kind of separates your image or your video images in red, green, and blue. All right, so that's just an overview of some of my favorite transitions. Now on to some of the good stuff. I'm going to go back to my Transitions 1 project, and I actually rid myself of one of the transitions here in the timeline. So the next transition is actually in a category that's also from Sapphire of its own. And this category is called Sapphire Builder. It's located in the video transitions. The way I like to explain it is, if there were one transition that ruled them all, this would be it. So,
Nick,
love it, love it.
can we pop in for 1 second? We had
Definitely.
a user there. They wanted to know if you could play some of the transitions all the way through so that they can see what you're talking about and how the effect ultimately looks.
Yes. So I have a couple of the renders one here. So let me just hit Control tilde here. Just some of the render ones I'm going to play through. I'll try some of the ones that aren't rendered as well. So that's the film effect with just the roll transition that's there. There we've got one of the shakes with some blur added, and the amplitude and frequency are actually set to their original values. So that is the swish pan 3D. So that's like with the reflected tiles on, the separation of the red, green, and blue channels, and the dissolve between the Z distance of those elements. Now just to go back to my original project, I'm also going to just hit Control tilde. This is what I customized first off, so this is dissolve glow. Okay, so that's from black. Okay, keep in mind the video image has been just decreased just to speed it up over this webinar preview. And just to try to show another version of that here in a second. There you can see it. So that was, it's over 1 second in this case, but of course I can take that transition. Let me just show it a little bit faster as well for the user. Okay, just a faster transition there of 10 frames long. Hopefully that gave you some ideas there and answered that question, Mary. Awesome.
I'd like to jump in and say, Nick, great choice of transitions too on here. Like, you know, you're pretty much on with what the most popular Sapphire transitions are. I mean, we collect anonymous usage data, so we get to kind of see what a lot of people are using, and dissolve glow, dissolve blur, swish pan, swish 3D, lens flare. These are definitely, I would say, in the top 5. So so you're great job in picking. You're pretty much dead on with the rest of the industry.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. But yeah, these are some that I've used on certain projects as well as in different collaborations as well.
And one other thing I'd like to add, you were very politically correct with talking about the lens flare transition. The default, it does look like something from like the early 1990s, but great to point out that there's over 150 in there, and there's some really slick lens flares. There's some ones modeled after, you know, J.J. Abrams, and some real almost like modern, you know, motion graphics lens flares that, you know, only exist in After Effects and Premiere, you know, don't actually exist in any actual photorealistic lens flares, but, you know, look great in motion graphics.
Yeah, it's so you got 155 there, unlike you know, After Effects' built-in lens flare.
Sure.
You might need a little bit of a something into modern day terms. And I think another thing just to mention is that same lens flare that is a transition is also an effect. So if you needed to have lens flares as effects, that's kind of a shared engine there. And you can, all of those presets are available as an effect as well. So you just do S lens flare and you'll find that in the effects category for those of you who are looking to try out Sapphire. And now on to this effect that rules them all, which is S transition.
Yes.
And I mean this in a couple different ways. One is, let's just apply it to a clip. So I'm going to apply it to the edit point between my first and second clip. And I'll move my playhead over it and hit the equal key. So first of all, it looks very deceiving. You know, I promised you the one transition that ruled them all, and now you see a cross dissolve. So let's go in and actually hit Shift 5 to go to Effect Controls. So the first thing I'd like to show you is going in to load a preset. Let's say you know nothing about Sapphire, or know not too much about transitions or effects, and don't have the time to go into each one of them and see what they have to do. Here is your overview. So in this preset browser, just to keep in mind, I am on a transition tab. And here in this transition tab, you've got all of the various transition categories in one place. On top of that, if I double-click a transition category, such as S-Dissolve Blur, I can see all of the presets that are part of that category. If I liked one of these, such as the Murky Haze, I can select that and then load it here into Premiere Pro. So number one, all of your transitions here in one place. You can go through each of the categories and just preview the presets that are available for them. Now, things start to get even better in this place. So if I go to the New tab, these are new transitions that were created for Sapphire 10. So if you're looking to see what's new, you'll see a category of all the transitions that are new in Sapphire 10. Now, last but not least, even better, is the Builder Effects category. The difference between this and the Transition tab is important to understand. And what I mean by this is that these are actually transitions in some cases combined with effects, or transitions combined with transitions. Someone took the time to, let's say, add a blur with a light leak, or add a shake and add a light leak, or a type of wipe to create transitions or along with effects and create some very interesting looks. To give you a sense for some of the power of this, I'm going down here to select this strip scramble. You can kind of get a sense that this is going to animate these slides here. I'm just going to load it into Premiere Pro. Okay, and then sort of just move my playhead throughout this transition. You can see there that there's a strip scramble effect. Now let me just change the background here to video 1, and I want to give you a sense for the power of this. Now the most important thing to take away here is that if you don't want to go in and customize and create your own transitions, you don't have to. You can just choose a preset and you're done. But if you want to have a better understanding of how you can create your own, that's where you can look in the S transition and edit the effect. So I'm going to go here and edit the effect. And we're going to go into Builder. And inside of Builder, we're going to see a tree load up here in a second. And go. Sorry, I have a little bit of a lag here on my computer. There we go. So I'm just going to zoom out down here in the workspace. And these are all transitions as well as effects, or a lot of effects, combined with a transition to create this lovely strip scramble that you see. You can sort of see that strip scramble take place. You're seeing a kind of checkboard background turned on in this case, just because I have the view at the top here set to show checkboard. I'm just going to turn that off. We can see here that someone's taken their time to use a bunch of Sapphire effects and create a very complex transition. So this is the power of S-transition, your ability to combine transitions with effects. But if you don't want that power, or you don't want to go in and customize, you can use what people have already added to S-transitions library. And some of the things that are available there are quite powerful and hopefully helpful for your next project or workflow. So that's just some of the things that are available right there. I'm just going to actually hit OK to go back into Premiere Pro. All right. I'm going to hit the tilde key, and I'm going to select S-transition, and let's start from scratch and kind of build a customized transition inside Builder. So I'm going to hit the Reset Effect button. This is just going to reset that effect back to the cross dissolve that you see here. And in my timeline, I always love to zoom in on the transition just so I can see what's taking place a bit better. I'll make sure the background is set to video 1. And we're going to go in here and edit the effect. Okay, so I'm inside of Builder, as you can see, and I got a still shot of my outgoing shot and my incoming shot or incoming clip. Right now, the transition here is a S-dissolve, and I can change this to anything I see fit. So if I don't want the S-dissolve, keep in mind there's a category here for dissolves, a category here for wipes, and a category here for other, which doesn't translate to quite a wipe or dissolve. So some of you might be thinking, well, I don't want to use a dissolve. People use dissolves all the time, or I don't want to use a wipe because people use wipes all the time. And you know that's the truth. Like 98%, 99% of effects are all wipes or dissolves if you take a look at it in professional film and video. Now you can stylize and customize it to drive your story further, but keep in mind that that's the reality, is that 99% of the stuff that you'll see would Star Wars be Star Wars without its wipes? It's a big question to ask. That was just something that was at that time, a revolutionary wipe. And people are using different wipes or gradial wipes to create very interesting transitions or effects to support their brand or to support their story. Okay, so keep in mind we've got the dissolve category, the wipe category, making up 98% of the transitions that you see out there, as well as the other category. And from the other category, I'm going to select this strip side slide transition. And with that selected, we can see here that this is just a kind of like a type of wipe. It's just basically dividing your image into a series of strips here across the screen. Inside of Builder, with the transition selected, I want to just show you over to the side, you see the parameters of that transition. Okay, so I can load a preset of this strip side transition, but in this case, I'm actually going to play around with some of the parameters. So I actually want the size of the strips to be a bit larger. I'm going to kind of try to divide it into larger segments. So I'm going to make this 0.35. You can see there that we have larger strips being created. I'm just going to hit the play button because I can preview those strips and as well as get a sense for the timing of this transition that takes place. Okay. Now just taking a look at that, I want to increase the speed. And in order to increase the speed, I'm actually going to bring up the speed value, bring down the speed value. I'm going to bring it down to about 4. You can see here that those strip slides start to grow or basically animate a bit faster on screen. I'm going to increase that motion blur to about 0.5. I'm also going to change the strip angle to go in the opposite direction of 180 degrees. So with those changes, you can see what takes place. It's going in the opposite direction. And one strip after another, these go off screen. Just to switch this up, I'm also going to change the order, and I'm going to randomize this. So, say you've gone in here and customized this transition. And what you'd like to do is make this available to some junior editors on your team who also work on projects with you. They don't want to go into Builder. They just want to be able to use presets, and you want to provide them with something that's extremely simplified. So rather than going into effect controls and seeing a long list of parameters, you just want to give them access to a few of them. With my transition selected here, I'll let you notice that you can choose what to bring over into Premiere Pro. So let's say you don't want to bring any of these parameters over. I can click this top check mark. You can see there, right now, nothing is selected. I'm going to go in here and just choose a few that I think will be useful for the editor. So that's going to be strip size. I think giving them access to the angle as well as the speed is all that they'll need. If I need to, I can customize this later on. But right now, that's all I think that they need. So I'm going to leave it at that. And when we go over to Premiere Pro in a little bit, because we're going to be adding to this transition, keep in mind that those are the only parameters that are going to show up, which is awesome. Now, just before, I'm going to rename this node, which is showing down here in the workspace, to something different. I'm going to call it slide. Right, and I can just choose the direction that it's currently sliding in. You can see it's sliding from left to right, so I'll just type in that. Random. Okay, so I've renamed that node, and it updates the name down here in the workspace, as well as updates it up here, just keeping everything nice and organized in my effect builder. So let's say now I actually want to combine this with a light leak. Now, a light leak is not a transition, it's an effect that's available under your lighting category in Effects. I'm going to go here to the Components section, which is actually a gateway to the majority of effects and transitions available with the Sapphire package. Now, if I go up here to search all, I'm just going to type in the word light. We can see here that a few different lights load up, including the light leak. If I take this and actually drag this down here, right now this is going to be applied to both of the clips. We're going to have a light leak transition over them. So I've added that as a node. You can see that in combination with the strip slide, I now have this animated light leak taking place as well. So pretty awesome. And what's making this light leak effect animate right away is in fact this animation graph that you see here. Sort of you can see that it's a transition type of animation based on this sort of little triangle icon. We're going to get into that in a little bit further, but when you apply effects in a transition setting, they are set, or a couple parameters, or one parameter is set to auto animate. So let's go here to the light leak and actually load a preset from the light leak effects. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to load a preset. You can see there the ton of light leak presets that you have that you can be used as both an effect and a transition. And then when you find something that you like, kind of just taking a look here, and I saw this Santa Anita light leak earlier that I really liked. Just going to play it back here. And just to see it without the video background, I always like to sometimes switch this and try to preview it on black so you can see what's taking place above your video. Just gives you an idea and just to see what's taking place. There's a little bit of some atmospheric effects taking place here as well. Just a great way to get more notable of what these transitions are actually doing. So I'm going to go back to the preview on source, and I'm now going to just load that into Builder. And there we can see that light leak transition take place over my strip scramble. Awesome. So I'm going to hit the pause button here and kind of just move over the middle of the transition. And then again, I can still now just take that starting place of the preset that I've decided and start to customize some of the parameters. So in this case, I might actually want to slow down the speed of these. Scale lights here at the top is a great way to make those lights a lot larger or brighter if you need to. That's one of a few. You can also increase the gamma of the overall transition between the two shots. Play around with the saturation. And you've got two different ways of changing color. So you've got the color up here at the top, which is kind of like the overall look of the light leak, combined with the elements that make up your light leak. So you've got a couple down here that make up this light leak. And you can see if I go into them, they have their own colors as well. And you can come in here, of course, customize those, or the overall look at the light leak. So lots of control right here. And again, you know, I'm creating this for someone else in this case. I don't want to show them all of these parameters. I want to make it simple when they're in Premiere Pro to use after they've used this as a preset. So what I'm going to do, the top here under the selection parameters, I'm going to deselect everything. And once I do, everything now turns off. Let me just choose a few that I think will be useful. I think the color would be useful for them to switch the overall color or feel of the shot. Play with the speed, the gamma, and going down here, maybe flicker, amplitude, and frequency are also important. So those are, again, what's going to show up in Premiere Pro, along with the parameters that I've chosen from the strip slide transition. So I'll just name this Light Leak Santa. And just because I slowed down the speed, I'll type in the word slow just so I know what I've done to that particular effect, just keeping everything nice and organized. Now, last but not least, you'll notice here on the strip slide transition, as I take a look, there is a blur happening when the transition goes in. And I'll just increase that blur so you can see it. That's for the movement of the image as it goes off screen. Now, what I'd like to do is for the incoming clip, I would actually like to blur that as it comes in and not add additional blur to the clip that is leaving or what we're going from. So what I'm going to do under my components here is actually go to my blur and sharpen category. I'm just going to select a blur here in the components. And rather than apply this as a node down here, I'm just going to apply it to the to column. Okay, this is quite cool. And I just want to show you that the blur right now as I move through this, okay, is actually happening just on this clip. And the reason that I'm only seeing the incoming clip is because of this preview selected node button that's on. Now if I turn that off, we can see the blur of that clip coming in combination with all of the other effects. So with that preview selected node, I'm actually going to turn it on again and just work on that blur. So I might come here to the blur amount and lower it a bit, and I'll just choose that no blur on the relative y-axis and more blur on the relative x-axis to give the user just some control of this blur incoming. So let me just change that node name here. Let me just turn off all the parameters. I just want a few of these to show up, such as blur amount. And let's give them access to brightness as well as scale opacity. So I've renamed all of these effects as well as the transitions. I'm pretty happy with where this is, and I want to save this as a preset, but I want to make sure that it's only the parameters I've chosen to publish to Premiere Pro is what's going to come inside this preset. So in order to do this, now that I've done my work or finished my work in the effect builder, I'm going to choose OK. And come back into Premiere Pro. This transition, as you can see, updates. Even better, with the transition selected, if I take a look here in Effect Controls, I've only got what I've chosen to publish coming over. So from the left and right slide random, those parameters, the 3 parameters that I chose inside of Builder, that's all that shows up. Right here, it's all, by the way, only one transitional effect, right? So it's not like several effects or transitions stacked on top of each other. It's treated nicely as one. We've got the blur incoming, those parameters, and then the light leak Santa slow as well. So I just customized the transition, making it easier for, let's say, a junior editor to use this and only see a few of the parameters that was used to make this transition. Awesome. Now it's time to save this so that I don't have to do this again. I've done a lot of hard work here. So I want to go in and save this as a preset. Okay, so we've got this option, so we can say the combined transition, which is like the strip scramble with blur and light leak. You can see there I got a lovely little author credit. Thank you, Sapphire. And I'm just going to go here and choose animated, blurred, bright, and any type of characteristic that I think should be associated with this kind of energetic. Let's save this as a favorite. Make sure glowing, light leak, lighting, and any of these other categories or colors that describe this, again, we can use here. And of course, add our own characteristic. And this could be used for finding the light leak a lot easier with these characteristics. Great. Now, keep in mind, if you need to share this with someone on another system, you can export this preset to a file at this place. And then with this renamed, this transition, I'm going to save it. So that's saved. Great. Just going to actually move over to my next edit point here, which had the dissolve glow from earlier. I'm going to hit Shift 7 to go to my Effects tab. Just add another rendition of S transition to the clip. We get a dissolve to start with. But you know what? I know that I just wanted to use that transition I just created. So here in a second, I'm going to go into Effect Controls. We're going to go load a preset. Since I know this is a builder effect, I'm going to go to the builder effects here. Or actually, you know what? I'm just going to go into the favorites that I've marked. And there it is, that strip scramble with blur and light leaks. Thanks, since I've saved that as a favorite, it's a lot easier to find within the immense preset browser. And with that, I'll load that into Premiere Pro. So here it is, and maybe, you come in here and either you can customize the parameters that we're given here for the junior animator, but if you're getting tired of that strip scramble, you can always go back in and edit the effect. So let me just change here the background to video 1. I'm going to choose here to edit the effect. Okay, and here's that strip slide transition. No, I'm only seeing that because I'm previewing this selected node. Come in here and just say, you know what? I would rather to have something a lot simpler, maybe like a dissolve edge raise. You can see there, let me just select the light leak, the combined effect. And of course, I can go in to that transition and customize its parameters as I see fit. Raise brightness is a bit much in this case. Make that something like 2. Customize the direction or where the raise center is. Lot of control here. And really, by going in and selecting presets, you can get familiar with some of the possibilities of transitions with Sapphire, as well as working in Builder. Now, I want to make one more mention. I'm actually going to just go here to my transitions complete project here in a second. And I thought it was important not only to talk about transitions, so here are some of the transitions already rendered out. So that was one of the glows. That was a strip slide scramble that I made earlier. And this was another one where I changed it to a type of wipe. So you might have noticed on the first clip that I actually have something else called S effect on this clip. And I wanted to mention S effect for one reason, and also effects in Sapphire for one reason. Why I wanted to mention S effect is kind of like S transition for effects. It's the one effect that rules them all. So you apply it to a clip, and it doesn't appear like it's much when you first look at it. But just like S transition, you can go into it and edit the effect. And we'll have access to the entire effect library there. Now, in this instance, what I did was I applied a grunge effect. And I really like grunge because it has literally a series of a ton of different types of textures. It consists of 3 stamps, the parameters, and one of the stamps is watercolor. And every so often I do watercolor type transitions for various video projects. And all I wanted to mention is with grunge selected, okay, the majority of effects have these thing called animation curves, okay? And it's animation curves that essentially create various types of animations. So without the need to keyframe, which is kind of awesome. So I just want to show you what I did to one of these. I played around with the stamp opacity here, and if I click on this little curve, you can create different default animations, so like ramp ups and ramp downs. You can see transitional ones here. But in this case, what I did was I added a default curve here where the value of the stamp opacity is extremely strong. And I changed the end time to here to kind of create like a fade in from watercolor to the image. I did this with a couple other parameters as well. So if you look carefully, I played with stamp density. I also played with the stamp size. And the reason I bring this up is that, you can use any effects as a kind of an in-out transition within Sapphire, all right? And you don't need to keyframe. You can go into Builder and essentially use these animation curves to simplify the process. So that was just one thing I wanted to mention, is just also you can think when using Sapphire, beyond just using S transition or all the transitions there, don't forget that there are effects with animation curves, and you can access them by basically placing S effect on a clip and then going into Builder and just making a couple animation curve adjustments. So that brings me kind of to the end of what I needed to cover, and I was just checking Brian and Mary, are people still listening and engaged, and any questions, anything to add?
We are definitely here. We're just furiously answering questions going on here. One thing I'd love to if you could just touch on very quickly. Someone asked if you could show again how you say the Sapphire transition as a native Premiere transition. I know you touched on that earlier, but maybe just a little quick recap.
Nope, not a problem. So with the transition selected, okay, you go over to your effect controls. You can see it right here, my S transition, okay? And if you select this and then control click it, you can save this as a preset, okay? Once you do, you'll get a Save Preset dialog box. You can rename that preset accordingly, and you can find that presets in a already named folder called presets here at the top. You can see some of the presets that I've saved. Now, just a note, this is actually saved as an effect. Just going to mention this again. It's not saved as a transition, but it can be applied as a transitional element. All you need to do is kind of take it and then drag it. Hold on, let me find the one that is actually a transition. There we go. And you can see there that it's applied as a transitional element. Does that answer your question, or the question out there, Brian?
Yes, that's perfect. Perfect. One thing, a very common question being asked on the boards is regarding GPU acceleration. So I'd just like to let everyone know. So Sapphire is, GPU accelerated for the CUDA platform, which basically means if you have an NVIDIA card, you experience some great GPU acceleration. Sapphire is not GPU accelerated on the OpenCL format, which is for all AMD cards and basically almost all modern Macs. That being said, we spend a lot of time, working on Sapphire being as fast as possible in software render only mode. So in things, when you're talking about transitions, to be honest with you, you really don't see that much difference, if you have a CUDA card or not. Where you really see the advantage of having CUDA card is if you're doing certain render-intensive effects like edge rays or bokeh lights or rack to focus. You're going to see a big speed increase there with a CUDA GPU. But for things that are in the 10 to 30 frame transitions, there's almost really no difference, whether you have a GPU that we support or not. So just good to know that, a lot of people are wondering, like, will this work on Premiere if I don't have a CUDA card? And yes, it's very fast without the CUDA card. What else? What other questions do we have here? Nick, if you're done, I'll just answer some of these questions and we can kind of go in.
Yes.
What is the significance of setting background to video one? That's a great question from Adam. Just a good way to within Premiere, you can set the background to a different layer. Sometimes, it can get confused if it's set to none. So, Nick's kind of just doing best practices there, and always making sure that, your background is correctly set to video one. Is Sapphire for Resolve for Premiere two separate plugin patches? Okay, great question from Robert out there. So if you purchase Sapphire for Premiere, that license works on any OFX platform as well, which is how Sapphire works within Resolve. So basically, if you purchase a node lock license, like a permanent license for Adobe, it'll work on Resolve on that same machine. If you are on a Sapphire subscription plan, those subscription plans are Adobe only. So there is an Adobe subscription and an OFX subscription. So if you're, working at, the $4.99 per year kind of plan, then it's only going to work on Adobe, and you do need to have a separate subscription for Resolve. At that point, it almost makes sense to just, if you're interested in that, just to buy the permanent license, because that's something you get to keep forever. And the Adobe and, like I said, OFX licenses, they're kind of work together as long as they're on the same machine. We also offer, a whole bunch of different licensing options. We offer floating licenses and blah, blah, blah. So feel free to contact us after if you have any questions about licensing.
All right, well, thank you so much. I think it's about time to wrap up unless you have anything else you want to add, Nick. If you guys have any questions, I encourage you to find us online. Nick, would you like to plug anything online before we sign off?
Yes, if you guys need to reach out, you can reach me at nick@clipsandhandles.com, and expect I'll be having some video tutorials coming out shortly on a YouTube page, so you can stay tuned for that. There'll be information on my webpage and a few other resources through Linda as well. So.
Perfect. Brian, is there one last thing you want to add before we sign off, or are you good?
No, yeah, I'd just like to add, obviously we're recording this webinar and we'll put it up online, but actually if you go to the GenArts YouTube channel right now, we've actually worked with Nick to create a 10-minute tutorial on exactly this transition builder. So if you want to watch something that's a bit more concise and moves a little faster, you can go to the GenArts channel on YouTube, and you can check out
Cool.
Nick's tutorial on transition builder there as well.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.
Have a great day, everybody.